Hey, so I mean, you talk a lot about timeless leadership principles. When you use the word timeless, what does that mean to you in terms of like practical terms for leaders today?
Oh, that's a great question. Right in the deep end. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, when I say timeless leadership, what I really mean is that over the last 100 years, more leadership training material has been around strategy and execution. It's talked more around how do you formulate a strategy, how do you get people around, how do you mobilize a team, how do you execute correctly, right? Always numbers based predominantly, but a fraction of leadership experts have really talked about the human element. So when I talk about timeless leadership principles, that's the human element, the part that focuses on the inner working of the leader,
Hmm.
the values of the leader, because it always boils down to that leader.
Right.
Like people will take the cue from that person. So we will easily forget the numbers you achieved, but we will never forget the leader.
Right. And can you share one of those principles that you believe will never go out of date? They will stay timeless.
Kindness.
I love that.
Like kindness, really. And it's shocking how a lot of people sort of overcomplicate this leadership thing, and talk about, the presence, charisma. All of those things are great,
Hmm?
no doubt. It helps that you're able to communicate an idea,
Mm-hmm.
but how kind are you?
Right.
Right.
Mm.
I think it was Maya Angelou that said, people forget how, sort of like what you say, but they
Right.
won't forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And we forget that that element is there. Now, there are tough decisions that leaders have to make,
Hmm.
but you can still be kind when you're making very tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
When things are said out of love and when things are said out of the human element, it's often easier to accept. It's that sandwich approach, right? You start with something really good about what you're about to deliver, and then you give constructive criticism and you wrap it up with that, because you don't want that person to leave feeling that you've been unkind to them. So I think that's one timeless principle that you just it's really timeless.
Yeah, and that's really refreshing to hear because I think we often dehumanize like leadership and work and business, and it's so nice to hear you just come out straight away say kindness. How do you see something like kindness showing up in environments that are uncertain and fast paced?
When an environment is fast paced, I think as a leader, first thing you want to do is make sure that what's going on outside is not happening on the inside of you. Because really, life in itself, and this is my personal experience, I've found that when we use the word fast paced, sometimes we're trying to really express that we don't understand or it's too chaotic for us to
Right.
comprehend. Like, I'm moving on a fast train down here, right, to the studio, but inside of me, I'm calm. Now, there's chaos going on around me. And I think that's a really good analogy to sort of describe how you show kindness in that space. That you start with groundedness as a leader, center yourself, because the chaos on the outside is not as important as what's going on the inside. When your inside is well and you're grounded, you
Mm.
can still show kindness in a very fast paced, deadline heavy environment, because on a daily basis as a leader, you're grounded.
Wow, I feel like you're talking straight to my soul. I'm like, I forget the cameras are here. I'm like, this is so good. But I mean, what leadership myths do you hear people still believe in today that you just roll your eyes and you're like, that's just simply not true? And let me tell you why.
There's so many of
Right.
them. There's so many of them. One I challenged on Instagram a couple of days ago was actually, if you are, if a person is claiming to be a leader without followers, they're just going on a stroll, something along those lines. Like, it's not the exact words, and I thought to myself, breathe in, okay? Don't don't troll this person on Instagram, all right? So slow down, but challenge that thinking.
Mm,
And the way I challenged it was, what if the followers have not identified the leader yet?
mm,
Because self leadership is often overlooked. I might not have 10,000 followers. I might not even have one follower that believes in my ideology,
Mm.
that believes in where I see, because leadership, it really is about seeing before everyone else sees. If you want to see a great leader, it's someone that's got a vision that a lot of people think is actually quite loony, and sometimes we don't get it, so we just go with what we're used to. So sometimes the followers might not have discovered the leader yet. So that's one of the things I challenge, that leadership is not about how many people follow you.
Mm.
And I think that's central to a very number based ideology around leadership today.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. It really is. And I mean, is there a principle that you once believed, like you swore by it, and then you had this realization that, oh, I've now outgrown this?
Um, Success. There was a time in my life that I had a perspective towards success that was not particularly materialistic, but
Mm.
some parts of me, in my secret place,
Right.
sort of envies that I don't have the numbers. I don't
Okay.
have this. I don't have that. Now, I have, quite a lot of, successful numeric attributes,
Right.
that I can always point at, right? Awards that, I have been privileged to achieve, businesses I set up straight out of university with no experience. So I can really count on certain things, but some part of me always wanted more. And it is that I had to redefine, that as a leader,
Mm.
first of all, going back to that grounding statement, you always have to stay grounded, because there's no end to the numbers.
Right.
It's infinite.
Mm.
And it's like Simon Sinek says, are you playing the finite game or the infinite game?
Mm.
And you always have to ask that. So I had to get to a point in my life, and that's, sort of challenges I faced, and I had to break down before I can come to that realization that at some point you have to have a number that you stick with, and you're like, that's it. Anything outside that is just an extra bonus that I can do something
Yes.
valuable with.
Yes. Yeah, because I guess if you keep shifting that goalpost, then you're not feeling like you've actually accomplished your goals. Then that thing of not being on the ground and present and a good leader,
Exactly.
it's not there.
Exactly. And
Amazing.
sometimes you will find that you might be talking to your team members, but you're talking at your team members because you're so focused on a particular number in your
Mm.
head that you eventually overlook what they're doing, the efforts they've put in to even achieve that 10%. That
Mm.
doesn't seem okay enough at this point, because
Exactly.
you've got this 100 that you're working towards.
I hear that. That's again talking about the kindness, talking about this, the effort and that 10%. It's really refreshing to hear. So thanks for bringing that to the space. Appreciate
you.
it. So you're talking about the grit framework.
Mhm.
For anyone watching and listening, can you walk us through what that means and what it stands for?
Absolutely. So the grit framework came off the back of the research, I did, looking at leadership principles and how it's been taught. As I mentioned earlier on, that only a fraction focuses on the human element.
Mm.
And the grit framework really is about bringing humans back into that conversation on leadership. And what does it stand for? G stands for groundedness. And I've used that word a couple of times already. That as a leader, you have to be grounded, centered in the spirit of leadership, because there is a spirit to leadership. It's not just about execution. There's a spirit to it. There's a framework. There's a mindset. There's a presence that it comes. You can walk into, I don't know if you ever had friends, growing up, that you just notice something different about them. They just knew how to command a room.
Mm.
They're somehow, somewhere at a party, people just, walk towards them. They're not the best dressed at that party, but they're the center of that party.
Right.
It's just because that they carry that spirit of leadership. So being grounded in the spirit of leadership is very important. The R really talks about resilience, and resilience not in the aspect of being able to bounce back.
Mm.
Resilience more around how are you taking feedback from your failures to build resilience. So
Okay.
having that strategic mindset towards it, because I can learn from all the failings within my company, but I can repeat that in my next startup.
Mm.
Right?
Oh,
If I have not learned to extract that as a feedback for the next step. So
mm.
resilience, you build resilience in that standpoint, not just about
Oh,
perseverance. And then the I stands for intentionality. Right. And intentionality here really is being intentional with your words as a leader,
mm.
being very, it looks at the communication element of
Okay.
leadership where you're very intentional with your words, you're kind with your words, you're precise with your goals, your objectives that you're working towards, you're making them very smart,
Mm.
specific, very measurable. All of these things are the elements that makes up that intentionality part
Mm-hmm.
of it. And then the T really is that is just about timely execution,
Okay.
right? It's making sure that when you are sort of getting to the end of this leadership journey, whatever you're trying to achieve, you have the execution mindset, but you also have a time frame that you're working towards at every time.
Okay.
So that T is interchangeable,
Mm-hmm.
timely execution, tenacity, all of those words that you can sort of come around there.
Yeah.
But really it's the bow that brings everything together.
Okay. And the grit framework, how does that differ between other leadership models?
Good question. So where it differs really is focusing on the human element, because if you get the grounding correctly,
Mm.
if you're grounded as a leader, everything else sort of fits into place.
Right.
So what really makes it stand out is the grounding element, because it
Mm-hmm.
focuses on the leader. So the questions I'm asking you when I'm working with you as a coach
Mm.
is really, I want to know you. I don't want to know what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
That's secondary.
Mm.
I want to know you, right? I want to know why you want to be the next Zuckerberg. Okay, why are you building that startup? Because if we don't work on that today, you would eventually become a shipwreck at some point, because like psychologists will let you know that we are framed into pretty much parts, right?
Ah.
No matter how much a leadership journey we are on, it's always boils down to one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you love me? Do people love me? Do I love me? Right? That's always the first part. Number two, am I accepted for what I'm doing? So again, it's that I part. But if you've worked in this sort of culture that is really focused about execution, the next big technology, what are you utilizing AI in your business? Oh yes, that's a great question, but
Mm.
we're still focusing on execution here. So I'm not going to start with execution. I'm going to start with you first, because if
Okay.
I get you right, then everything else fits right. Let me tell you a story, which I put in my second book. Um, um, which I was reading on the way down here today. It's a story of a preacher. This preacher was preparing for sermon on Sunday, and then his son comes into the room saying, Daddy, I want us to play, right? And the father is like, I'm really focused here. I'm preparing for sermon. Go away. The kid kept coming back. Then the father thought, you know what? I'm going to give this boy a puzzle to fix. And he just gave him a puzzle. And he says, go put that together. And it's the world. Put the worlds together and come back. It's pieces of paper.
Mm.
All right. The boy goes away, comes back in 5 minutes, has solved the problem. The father asked him, how did you do that? Because it takes me 20 minutes. It's taking you 5 minutes. The boy said, well, it was easy. I looked to the back of the picture and I saw a person there. And I figured if I fix the person, then I fix the world.
Oy. Wow. Very profound. Very, very profound. And I think I might know the next answer to this question given the topic and given the core of grit. But if a leader was to adopt something new tomorrow for their team or for their business based on the grit model, what would you say it should be?
It would be the intentionality part of things.
Right.
I think it will be that. Because no matter how grounded you are, no matter how much you know the reason why you want to be a leader, you have to be intentional around your execution, your relationship with your team members, intentional around also, you know, seeing your team members. Some of them are just passing through your company. They're just passing through your organization. They're heading somewhere. When I opened up a franchise years ago, and it was successful, but you know, sort of went pear-shaped afterwards, and I learned my lesson from that. Today, when I look back, do you know what I remember? Really is the team members that I invested in. And one of them currently has a very successful logistics company, right? And I thought to myself, I remember when this boy came in,
Right.
fresh graduate, no experience whatsoever. But I saw, some part of me saw that he was on a journey. So my communication with him most of the time was, where are you going? Give me your 5-year plan. I do expect you to deliver XYZ
Right.
here for me.
Yeah.
Right. These are the OKRs we're working towards. These are the objectives. These are the numbers, sell figures I want you to deliver. But most of the time, my question was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I didn't leave that to just the interview process. Right. I kept asking him. My one-to-one sessions around him was, where do you see yourself? Okay, if this company goes pear-shaped today, where do you see yourself? And I worked with him and was very intentional with that. So I think that would be what I'll focus on, or I'll advise people to focus on.
So you've been very open about your experience with burnout. Could you take us back to those first moments when you realized, like, something isn't right?
I will be lying to say that I knew precisely in the moment. I think it was more in retrospect.
Right.
When I look back after coming out on the other end of it, I looked back at certain behavior patterns and certain things I was doing and certain thinking patterns I was indulging in, that actually those were early warning signs that I overlooked. So, for example, irritability, right? And justifiably irritable, right? Because it's not just, I'm not making it up. People are irritating me.
You really are annoying me, but like my reality might be skewed right now, but you're annoying.
You are annoying. So no need to gaslight me here, right?
Yeah.
You are annoying. But it's just, in retrospect, I see that my threshold was different, right? Prior to that moment, I used to be able to take a lot more. At that point, everyone was walking on thin ice with me at that time. And that really is an early warning sign that I ignored, that I didn't really see.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously you start to deal with other symptoms like sleeplessness and insomnia and all of the other parts of it.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. Like, is there anything that you just overlooked, but now if you noticed it in a friend or a colleague, what things could you identify?
First of all, it would be, if the person is a bit too centered around one topic, like we've met up a number of times, and you keep hammering on this particular topic, right, on this thing you saw on the internet or whatever it is. It might be a conspiracy theory or whatever it is, and you just keep hammering on it. It sort of is something, looking back now, I would be a bit conscious, like, might there be something on the line in here? Because our brains, really, our memory, our brain in itself is not supposed to be centered on one topic. It takes in all the information. You hear all the words I'm speaking today, but you won't remember most of it. You probably remember 10% of it. Even when you watch the video over and over again, because your brain wasn't supposed to be a storage. It's not a computer storage. It in itself is like a sticky wall. You just throw things at it, and some things stick, some things fall down, and that's about it. So when something sticks too long and you're just so focused on that, there's a potential of a compulsive, obsessive behavior, or on a topic that would give me a bit of concern. Because
Okay.
once you can't close that loop in your head, the
Yes.
chances is that you would have a breakdown. Because when you are having a breakdown or mental breakdown, what's really happening is a creative loop that you just can't get out of. You're fixated on something that's annoying you. You're
Right.
fixated on a feeling, a sensation in your body. You're fixated on a topic, and all of that will start to affect behavior and show up in different symptoms.
Yeah, and your patience apparently.
Hmm.
So when was it you or was it someone in your family or a relative or friend that started noticing a difference in you, or did you say, ah, something's not right in me?
I was fortunate, and I use the word fortunate because I just broke down. I mean,
Okay.
I lost every part of my cognitive thinking.
Mm.
My emotions were out of space. My logical, reasoning was completely out of space. So essentially, I was gone. I was, you know, I had everything in the books that you can ever think of.
Right.
So for me, it was advantageous because it gave me the opportunity to do the shadow work I needed to do.
Right.
Gave me the opportunity to really reflect. Gave me the opportunity to reset
Mm.
completely my life in that sense. They probably notice certain things, but maybe they don't have the verbiage. In terms of family members, they might not have the verbiage to have pointed it out at that time.
Yes.
But I've never quite asked him, sat them down. I'm like, Mum, when did you notice I was starting to go cocoa?
Right, like we're having an intervention here. When did you notice? When did you notice? No, but and then once you realized, or
Hmm.
once you said, like you said, had
Hmm.
this breakdown moment, or this almost like a breakthrough,
Hmm.
because that's the
Hmm.
moment it starts to go up.
Hmm.
The journey of getting support,
Hmm.
did you find that difficult? Because I want to, in the next, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
Hmm.
talk about men's mental health and the
Hmm.
stigma that comes with that.
Yeah.
But for you, did you find that getting help and support was challenging? Was it easier after you realized?
Mm. It was a mixed bag.
Okay.
Mixed bag in the sense that because I went the sort of the institutional way of getting support, right? The
Okay.
hospital. It came with it different parts of exposure
Right.
to elements that was kind of could have made it worse
Mm.
than it was. Luckily, because I had done a whole lot of work on myself, then I didn't get wrapped up in that system. But if you didn't know much about, self development before you had a breakdown, if you were not value based and you didn't have an idea of who you were, or you just really didn't know yourself before the breakdown,
Mm.
the sort of help I got would have made matters worse, definitely.
Worse.
Mm-hmm.
In what sense?
In just pretty much in the sense that when you're dealing with a sort of an episode that comes with it a family element, right? There's safeguarding issues that would usually come up as a matter
Mm.
of fact, as a matter of that, and you're still healing, but you're still having to deal with your identity being questioned because the stigma around mental health is still there, whether we like it or not, right? And even I have to wheel myself back sometimes from not, labeling someone,
Mm.
seeing someone and appreciating that person might be neurodivergent, and
Right.
that's okay. It doesn't make them less human than
Yeah,
than
yeah, yeah.
than everybody else. They just see life in a different perspective.
Mm.
So the stigma is still there, right? So it's that navigating that stigma and being sort of seen as a threat to the society can easily get you lost in that vortex where
Mm.
you actually just don't know what's real anymore.
Ah,
And then you then really become a danger to society.
I see. And when you talked about like the stigma, did you find that the stigma right now in society was that did that help you because there is some awareness, or did it really feel like a stigma against you when you went out on your journey to seek help?
Oh, that's a good question. Luckily, it happened in a time in history for me that we've started talking about mental
We
health,
have. Well, we
right?
are.
And
We
we are,
are. As
right?
men, I'm happy to see it.
Exactly, right? So, luckily for me, the times are good in
Mm.
the sense that COVID had happened. A lot of people were talking about mental health, the importance of it. So, I was lucky that it happened in the time that it happened.
Okay.
If it didn't happen at that time, I really would I wouldn't know, how to really express or answer that question without sort of, living in the space of mind, because I I only discovered certain words to describe how I was feeling yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah. So was it aphasia or aphasia, something like
Okay.
that.
What does that
It's
mean?
So really, aphasia is just struggling to remember words, struggling to be able to comprehend language or use language.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of it could make you, from an outsider point of view, they might be thinking you're pretending, but you're not pretending.
Okay.
It's your brain at that point struggling to remember
Mm.
language. It doesn't stop your smartness.
Mm.
It doesn't stop how intelligent you come across. But in your head, you are struggling to comprehend what's being said.
Right.
So even though I'm nodding, so many thoughts are going on in my head thinking, what did he mean by that statement? Or I could have fixated on one word you used in that head, because at that point, my brain is trying to make sense. It's trying to comprehend
Mm-hmm.
everything, discard it, because the brain works so quick when it comes to conversations. You don't have to hear every single word that's coming out of my
Right.
head. You feel the gaps.
Mm.
But at that point, aphasia, when you're struggling with aphasia, your brain really is trying to pick on every word to try and make sense of it.
Okay.
And you can't help yourself.
And is this something you discovered because of the content that you consume on a daily basis? If so, what are you consuming? Or is this something that you felt and had to look up and be like, what's going on with me?
It's the latter.
Mm.
Because I'm always an inquisitive person. I've always been curious. In my first book, I said, we often say curiosity killed the cat, but without the curiosity of the cat, we wouldn't know that statement. We will know the reality of that statement.
Okay. Wow. And that's real. That's real.
So you can look at the bad side that the cat is dead, or you can look at, actually it takes bravery to be that curious for the cat to give us that storyline that we can hold on to.
Put respect on that cat's name.
Exactly.
Put respect on that
Right.
cat's name.
So I was curious to know, to try and find out what was going on in my body. These are strange feelings that's not me. There's certain words I was using, that's not me.
Yeah.
Because really, when the breakdown really happened was when I was questioning my identity. So that was anchored in my brain, somewhere in my memory, my long-term memory. And I could remember the moment of questioning my identity. So my quest to try and get back to that identity was what made me consume those content, to ask those questions.